again, everybody. Lance Smith here, and welcome to episode 258 of the Bible Difficulties and Answers podcast. We're now in week 4 of our 33-week journey through Mere Christianity, a conversation for the common hall. Last week in chapter 2, Lewis answered the big, yeah, but objections, showing that the moral law is not just herd instinct or a social convention we learned from our parents. This week in chapter 3, he pushes even deeper and asks, what does the existence of this law actually mean? Is it real? And if it is, what kind of reality are we dealing with? Lewis starts by reminding us of the 2 strange things he pointed out about the human race at the end of chapter 1. First, we are all haunted by this idea of a sort of behavior we ought to practice: fair play, decency, morality, the law of human nature. Second, we don't actually do it. He knows some people might think this isn't strange at all. After all, nobody's perfect, right? But Lewis says he's not trying to hand out blame right now. He's trying to find out the truth. And the very idea that something or someone is not what it ought to be has big consequences. Let me read you a key section so you can hear Lewis in his own words. If you take a thing like a stone or a tree, it is what it is, and there seems no sense in saying it ought to have been otherwise. But when you turn to the law of human nature, you have the facts, how men do behave, and you also have something else, how they ought to behave. In the rest of the universe, there need not be anything but the facts. But men behave in a certain way, and that is not the whole story, for all the time you know that they ought to behave differently. Okay, Lewis says this is really peculiar. With stones and trees, what they do is the whole story. A stone falls because of gravity. It doesn't ought to fall. But with human beings, there's always this extra layer. We know we ought to be unselfish, fair, and honest, even when we're not. And honestly, that ought follows us everywhere. It shows up in traffic when somebody cuts us off, and we instantly think, well, that wasn't right. It shows up when we tell ourselves, I really should call that person back, or I shouldn't have said that, or my personal favorite, tomorrow, absolutely going to eat healthy. And then tomorrow arrives, somebody brings donuts, and suddenly our moral philosophy collapses faster than a lawn chair at a family reunion. That's Lewis's point. Human beings are constantly evaluating behavior, not just other people's behavior, but our own. Even people who say morality is completely relative usually become remarkably committed to absolute standards the moment someone lies to them, cheats them, or takes the last parking spot after they've been circling for 10 minutes. Lewis pushes back against easy explanations. Some people say decent behavior is just whatever benefits society. Lewis replies that this doesn't get us anywhere. If someone asks, why should I care what's good for society? And you answer, because you ought to be unselfish, you simply come full circle. It's like saying the point of football, or soccer for my U.S. friends, is to score goals. True, but not very helpful. Scoring goals is the game, not the reason for the game. Or to put it another way, it's a little like opening a cookbook and discovering every recipe says, Step 1, cook it correctly. Well, thanks. That still leaves me wondering how to cook it correctly. Lewis says morality can't merely be defined by itself. The deeper question remains, why do we all feel this obligation in the first place? Lewis also shows that bad behavior isn't the same as inconvenient behavior. A man who takes your seat on the train because he got there first is inconvenient. But you don't blame him the same way you blame the guy who steals your bag. In war, A traitor might actually be useful to the other side, but they still treat him like human vermin. And sometimes the right thing costs us personally. Being honest when you could cheat, keeping a promise when it's inconvenient, staying in a dangerous place when you'd rather leave. I think Lewis is especially brilliant here because he's pointing out something we all experience but rarely stop to analyze. We don't merely prefer goodness the way we prefer chocolate over vanilla. We still feel obligated by it. Even when we fail, and we all do, we usually make excuses instead of simply saying, "Yes, I knew it was wrong, but I didn't care." Deep down, the excuse itself is proof that we believe some standard exists. So, what are we left with? Lewis concludes that the moral law is a real thing, something that exists above and beyond the facts of how people actually behave, is pressing on us, whether we like it or not. It's not made up by us, yet it's definitely there. And that means there must be more than one kind of reality. There's the ordinary facts of human behavior, and then there's this law that still stands above them, telling us what we ought to do. Here's what I want you to carry with you this week from chapter 3. First, pay attention to the gap between what you know you ought to do and what you actually do. That gap is one of the most important clues Lewis wants us to notice. Second, when you feel that inner pressure of, "I really should," even when it costs you something, remember, you're not just dealing with social rules or instincts. You're brushing up against a real law. And finally, ask yourself, if there really is a moral law that none of us invented, what or who put it there? Next Sunday, we move to chapter 4, what lies behind the law. Lewis is finally going to start exploring where this law might be coming from and what it tells us about the universe and about God. That chapter is where the book begins to turn a corner, so you won't want to miss it. Until then, here's my simple invitation. Come as you are. Stand in the hall with us. Notice that quiet but persistent voice of ought this week, and don't brush it aside too quickly. Keep asking the honest questions. Thank you for being here on this fourth Sunday of the series. I'm really enjoying walking through this book with you week by week. You can email me at BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers@gmail.com. Join the conversation on Facebook, and if you'd like to support the podcast, head over to buymeacoffee.com/Lance Smith. All episodes are archived at BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers.podbean.com. I'm Lance Smith, wishing you good health, good study, and God's richest blessings. So long, everybody.